Welcome to Go Live Vegas Studios in the entertainment capital world, Las Vegas, Nevada. We are going to be talking about Jack the Ripper today, and we're going to solve who Jack the Ripper was. Your host today is going to be Scott Goldsmith.
Hey, thank you, Danny. We want to welcome everybody to Goldsmith Weighs In. My co-host, Danny Miner, who is... has his own show called The Crime Solver.
Yes.
You got to check that out on Wednesday. Now, this guy's a retired detective, so when it comes to crime, Danny knows what he's talking about. So that's why we're here today, to see if we can, together, with the help of the audience, that's you, who will at the end of the show be voting on who they think is really the real Jack the Ripper. And with your help, we hope to unravel the whole 135-year-old mystery and see if we can come up with the real Jack the Ripper. What his motive was, how he got involved in all of this, and what urged him on to do such a heinous crime as being a serial killer of at least, from what I can tell from my research, 8 women. So we're going to start this off with basically the background on London. Let's talk about the background, Danny, of where all this occurred. We're talking 1888 now. Queen Victoria's been on
Yes.
the throne for 50-some years.
Right.
A long time. We're in the height of the Victorian age, the
Right.
Gilded Age.
Yes.
Now, you know, top hats, beaver hats, you
Right.
know, coaches.
I'm picturing it in my head right now. I'm looking at downtown London right now. I can see it.
Exactly. Such a great schism between the wealthy and the royals and the impoverished. We're looking at Whitechapel back then.
Right.
250,000 people living in slums.
Yes.
They had a lot of immigrants we're talking about there.
Right.
These immigrants are poor people. A lot of them didn't speak English at all. They had
Right.
just come to London, and they're working at poverty wages, way low wages. There's one gas light per street.
Okay.
It's dingy, it's dirty, it's smelly. They're throwing their waste out in the middle of the street. This is a slum that is ripe
Right.
for Jack the Ripper,
Yep.
to make his debut. And that's basically the time period that we're dealing with. And you being a previous detective, you know, no DNA,
Right.
no coordination between police departments,
Right.
no really modern, sophisticated detective tools.
Right.
So you can kind of understand, Danny, how he slipped away.
Scott, I think, and we talked a little bit before the show started. Here's the thing. If this happened now, right, this case would be solved. If this happened now, this case would be solved. We have DNA. Back then, who knows? They didn't even have fingerprints back then. You know what I mean? There was no cameras all over the place where there's cameras now. I think about, they probably didn't even have police radios back then. If you think about it, this case, and I even go back to thinking Bonnie and Clyde, right? They had no police radios. That's why they couldn't catch Bonnie and Clyde. It's the same thing. This case would be solved if it happened nowadays.
There is no doubt
Right.
about it. There's no doubt about it. And the fact is that we probably, you and I could not be sitting here with our audience trying to solve this 135-year-old unsolved murder mystery,
Right.
if they hadn't taken modern techniques and found evidence that they didn't have back then.
Yes.
That's kind of what's brought us to the point where we could actually say, yeah, I think this guy did it.
Yes.
Now, there were 1,600 people Danny interviewed. 1,600.
Wow.
100 policemen on the streets.
Right.
Scotland Yard. The London Police Department. We have 60 to 80 prime suspects. 60 to 80. And I mean, we're talking dukes and surgeons and,
Right.
you know, you name it.
Right.
Americans.
Right.
Everybody's in this suspect list. But I'm going to boil it down, if I can today, to the top 4 suspects that, in my opinion, could actually be Jack the Ripper, and the opinion, I might add, of several authors. And I'd like to say, by the way, while we're here, we were going to have Mr. M.J. Troe come on. And M.J. Troe is a prolific writer of books, but he's written 3 books on Jack the Ripper. And believe it or not, Jack the Ripper, from his point of view, he's nailed it down to where he's going to eliminate a couple of those suspects for us today. But I'd like you to put his book up. We're going to give him a plug anyway, Danny, because he was nice enough to think about coming on, and he got some kind of bug and wasn't able to make it. But he did write. This is his latest book, Ripper Hunter, Aberline and the Whitechapel Murders. But he also wrote a couple other books. I'll tell you what I have. He's got. Let me see here. Let me dig. We have got the Many Faces of Jack the Ripper by this guy. We've also got Jack the Ripper, the Quest for the Killer. So this guy knew a lot.
Yes.
I would have loved to have him on the show, maybe next time.
Well,
you and I are going to solve this anyway. So
Scott, you know what? And just thinking, we're talking about a case from the 1800s. And I said, and I talked about Bonnie and Clyde, and I'm saying to myself, these cases would have been solved nowadays. But if you think about it, we even had recent cases that are maybe 30 years old that we didn't have the technology. Think about the John Benet Ramsey case. Back in the John Benet Ramsey case, we didn't have the technology that we have now, the DNA, this and that. So even that case nowadays, I think would be solved, even though that was only maybe 30-some years ago. We just came so far in law enforcement.
no question about it. I'm just amazed every time I see one of these murders they don't think are going to get solved, like these 4 young people in Idaho.
Yes.
And they were able to pull that one together and
the
get
touch
it done.
DNA, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And they have more ways to catch you. So anybody who's thinking about committing a crime, remember, they got a lot of stuff they haven't even told us about. That they can find you with.
Well, it's hard to be a criminal right now, Scott.
It is
because there's cameras everywhere. So
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how anybody thinks they're going to get away with a crime nowadays, because there is cameras everywhere, and with this touch DNA, when you walk in this room, me and you are leaving DNA as we're sitting here.
Yeah.
So if you're in a room, DNA is going to be everywhere. So I mean, it's just such a big tool for law enforcement. And when I started in the 80s, we didn't have it. We didn't have DNA. It came later. And I started in 1988.
Well, let's get into the suspects.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give you our number 1 prime suspect.
Okay.
According to the authors of several of these books, he is a Polish-Jewish immigrant called Aaron Kosminski.
Okay.
All right. And he worked in the Whitechapel area at the time of the murders, so he's a good candidate. He hated women.
Okay.
He was schizophrenic, so and ended up being in a sane asylum for schizophrenia. And he also threatened women with a knife.
Ugh.
Decent suspect.
Yes, definitely a decent
good
suspect. Yes.
For being Jack the Ripper, right?
Yes.
All right, so that's Aaron Kaminsky. The next guy we got is a guy named Carl Fagenbaum.
Okay, Carl Fagenbaum.
He's a German sailor.
All right.
He traveled all over Europe and the United States. He was actually convicted of murdering at least 2 women, maybe 3. And his lawyer actually thought he was Jack the Ripper.
Wow.
Can we bring those pictures up, Aaron, so we can start seeing what these guys look like? Aaron Kaminsky first. Yeah, by the way, there was social unrest, by the way, in this time.
Of course, yeah.
People were not happy with the way things were going.
Yep.
So
and you got poverty.
Yeah.
And with poverty comes crime.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
just
exactly
the way it is.
Right.
Now,
unrest in Whitechapel. This is the beginning.
Right.
This is the beginning. Now, the women of Whitechapel are next. Bring that one up. Now, these women,
right?
They live such a impoverished existence. If they couldn't get work, they had to turn to prostitution.
Exactly.
They had no choice. They're starving.
Yes.
They're living on next to nothing. They have nothing.
Right.
You needed 3 pence to 4 pence a day to have a roof over your head at night. And a lot of times that roof was just a rope and a bench that you could lean forward on.
Oh my gosh.
60, 80 people in a room. Incredible conditions.
Yes.
Now, can we bring up Kaminsky, please? Let's see. That's an alley, by the way, in Whitechapel area. Pretty dingy, huh?
Dingy, yes.
1888. Okay, here's our suspects right up there. There's Aaron Kaminsky. He's first.
Right.
Right there. This is our prime suspect. And now, Scotland Yard thought this was a guy.
Right.
He wrote in the side of the book, but he said the Jewish community would not turn him over, would not testify against him, and the prime witnesses was a couple of Jewish guys.
Okay.
So they may have been protecting Kosminski at the time.
Okay.
They didn't feel that they could get, what do you call it, fair treatment under the legal system.
Okay.
Sound familiar?
Yes. Yes, true.
They could not get fair treatment by the liberal establishment system in London.
Okay.
So they just felt they had to take care of their own business.
Okay.
All right. So that's our guy Kaminsky.
Kaminsky.
All right. Now Carl Fagenbaum. Can we pull him up? There he is. Now I'm not a big fan of Carl Fagenbaum, but here's
Okay.
a guy who was in the area at the time. He had already committed murder. They convicted him of 1. He may have committed 3. His attorney actually thought he might be Jack the Ripper. But I believe, and this comes from T.J. Troe, who said, Scotty, I think he was too tall, 6'4".
Right.
He would have stood out.
Right.
But here's what I've got. He ended up getting killed. He ended up getting convicted of a murder, and he
Got the lecture chair, right?
in Sing Sing.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
In Sing Sing.
Yes.
So Carl Fagenbaum could have been the Ripper. Decent prospect, but I'm going to go with.
Let me ask you this: do we know, was the 3 women, was it women that he killed, that he was convicted of killing? The one? No, it wasn't.
No, none of those. No.
Okay.
He was convicted of murdering a completely separate woman. All right, now I'm going to go. Can we get the picture of Francis Tumbly up there, please? Tumbletti, I think is how you pronounce it.
Tumbletti.
Tumbletti, right there. Okay, now here's an interesting character. Tumbletti is a con man from the United States. They called him, basically he was selling snake oil.
Okay, he's
to
snake
the
oil
Indians
salesman.
and all that stuff. And he was in the Whitechapel area, though, at the time of the murder.
Okay.
So they were thinking this could be the guy. And he
Right.
actually had a collection, believe it or not, of uteruses
Yes.
that he collected. And they thought, this is pretty strange.
Yes.
The guy's running around with a bunch of jars of uteruses. And they called him on it. And he said, well, they're from all classes. So it's equal opportunity collection.
Oh, my gosh.
But he got arrested.
Okay.
They get him on some kind of assault.
Okay.
All right, and they put him in jail, and he doesn't get out. He gets out and gets sentenced to go to trial.
Okay.
On December 10th, but he was in jail at the time of the Mary Jane Kelly murder.
Oh, okay.
So as weird as this guy is, and now, by the way, Scotland Yard followed him all the way to New York to find out, could this really be the guy?
Okay.
But, he couldn't have done it while he was in jail.
No.
So we got to eliminate.
I would eliminate him.
Yeah,
yes.
Francis Tumbly.
Yes,
we gotta
I'd eliminate him.
All right.
Yes.
Now, our last and most recent suspect.
All right.
Can you pull up, please, James Maybrick?
All right.
Now, James Maybrick is a wealthy cotton merchant in Liverpool.
All right.
He also spent a lot of time in America, and he would go back and forth. And on one of the trips that he's coming back to London,
Okay.
this guy meets a beautiful Southern belle
Okay.
named Florence, and Florence and James hit it off right away.
All right.
And I would have to say that it was love at first sight for James Maybrick, because he decides that he would like to marry this lady in right away. So they get married in 90 days.
Okay.
After they get back to London.
All right.
She sees him as a wealthy merchant with a good name, some money there,
Okay.
title maybe,
All right.
and she decides that he's a good catch. So they get married. So these are the prime suspects for the Jack the Ripper murder. Is that all of them? No. Up on the screen, you'll see, the Duke. You'll see, I think over on the left there is Aaron Kosminski, and the other guy there is also over on the side, Mark Chapman. They thought he could be the Ripper, so there's no lack of good possible suspects when it comes to being the Ripper, the real Jack the Ripper.
And here's the thing. I think there's a lot of keys to solving this case. The one thing is, of course, his name's not Jack, but he made that name up somehow. But if you could solve why he made that name up, we could find the criminal. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Now, I can tell you who made a name up.
Okay.
All right. The guy's name who made up the Jack the Ripper is a guy by the name of Fred. Let me see here. Fred. He worked for the Star.
Okay.
And he and one of his colleagues came up with, and he actually confessed this to one of his friends.
Okay.
And research showed they'd done the handwriting analysis.
Okay.
And the Dear Boss letter comes up to be exactly in the same handwriting as this Fred. Let me see if I can grab the name.
Because he did sign. He wrote letters to the police signing Jack the Ripper, correct?
Right. He came up with Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
That was his, contribution to this whole case.
Okay.
And Jack the Ripper name wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for this guy named Fred. Whatever. I'll find it in a minute.
That's all right.
Don't worry about that. Let me see here. Jack the Ripper, the name. Anyway, we'll go on from there for now.
Okay.
Now, so we've got these suspects, and we've got the right environment for these murders. And what happens is Maybrick does marry Florence.
Okay.
Things go along just beautifully for a while. But what happens is that Florence finds out he's sending 100 pounds a year to his mistress.
Okay.
She becomes upset at this, and she decides no more marital arrangements.
All right.
She goes to her room, he goes to his. No more sex.
Okay.
That's it. And that starts building some tensions in the household.
Okay.
And lo and behold, he decides that he's going to follow her and see what she's up to. And, of course, she finds out that she's actually having a pretty torrid affair with a young guy that's a handsome young guy that works on this merchant exchange for cotton, and his name is Alfred Brierly.
Okay.
Drives him insane. Now, I want to go back a little bit.
Okay.
This guy Maybrick started out when he was in Norfolk, Virginia,
Okay.
where she's from, as a cotton merchant, and he became addicted to taking arsenic.
Okay.
In small doses in those days, they would take it as an energy.
Wow.
Small doses.
Okay.
But once you get on this and you get addicted to it,
Like anything.
you can't get off. You can't. They say the last dose of arsenic is your last dose.
Gotcha.
Okay, so he's now on arsenic few times a day, which can really
make him
get
crazy.
hallucinations, all this stuff.
Yep.
And he starts really fantasizing about this affair that his wife Florence is having with this Alfred Brierly, and they already have 2 kids. So it's he lives in a mansion in London, and called Battle Crease, and things start unraveling.
Right.
So let's talk about the first murder.
Okay.
All right, the first murder they say was Polly Ann Nichols.
Okay.
All right, and that murder was supposedly taken place. Polly's was on September 31st, I believe.
Okay.
I'm sorry, August 31st. But I believe that the first murder. Can you bring up the slide of Martha Tabram, please? Okay, the murders have started. It's August 7th, I think Martha Tabram had 37 stab wounds.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I think she's a good candidate. They linked her to the murder victims and Jack the Ripper, so I think Martha Tabram may have been the first.
I would agree.
Okay, so too much similarities in there. And that was on August 7th,
Okay.
1888. Now, this murder goes unsolved, and basically the next murder everybody now starts to pay attention to.
Right.
And that's Mary Ann Nichols. Now, this is on August 31st.
Okay.
Set the stage. It's raining,
Okay.
drizzling, overcast, lightning, thunder. She's out. She's trying to find 4 pence, 3 pence, so she can sleep somewhere for the night.
Okay.
And she ends up running across Jack the Ripper. And they think his technique
Okay.
was basically to put both hands on the throat to keep him from screaming. When he started to pass out, he would take him down. And this is so well planned that he would cut from left to right. So they thought he was a left-handed killer.
Right.
But he had figured out that the arterial spray would go away from him instead of toward him.
Okay.
And he didn't want to have a lot of blood stains on him. So, Mary Ann Nichols,
But that's why they thought he was a surgeon, right?
that's why they thought he was a surgeon.
Exactly,
He knew what
yep.
he was talking about
Yep.
or doing. And in her possessions are a handkerchief, a broken piece of mirror,
Okay.
and a comb. That's it. That's all she owned in the world.
Okay.
The mirror is interesting because that's very valuable back then.
Right.
If you had that, you had something of value.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting,
wow.
huh?
Yeah, that is.
All right. Now, this hits the newspapers big.
Okay.
Now, what they did is a reporter went out and figured out, he talked to 50 people, especially prostitutes, right away, and they came up with a story that they thought they saw somebody with a leather apron.
Okay.
So right away, tabloids go leather apron, the Star, everybody's, this is the birth of the tabloid press.
Okay.
This is what he actually brought into the 21st century.
So
is tabloid
that's where we got the
news.
National Enquirer and the Globe, right? All of that stuff.
Exactly, exactly. This is a guy, he had cut her major arteries on both sides of her neck,
Okay.
almost down to the vertebrae. He was trying to take her head off. And he actually did then eviscerate her.
Right.
He cut open her abdomen. He cut open her womb. He just destroyed the woman. And basically, this hits the press. Can we see the murder podcast headline? Oh, by the way, go back to that one with, there's Mary Ann
Yeah, I
Nichols.
saw that, yeah.
And so and let's go. And he slips away, of course, into the night. He knew Whitechapel well, and he actually rents a little apartment in Middlesex, right next to
Okay.
to that area. But here's the murder that they threw up: leather apron, leather apron, leather apron, and he wanted to call himself Sir Jim.
Okay.
Sir Jim. So when the Dear Boss letter comes out, which of course has the name of the guy who invented it, which I'm supposed to tell you if I know my notes are correct, then he actually did the Dear Boss letter, and now they start calling him Jack the Ripper after this.
Okay.
So it was leather apron up till then. Now people are taking notice.
Right.
This is a big deal. This is the second murder in a month. This woman has been eviscerated. It is ghastly, it's horrid, and it starts to get traction.
Right.
They start to sell 1 million papers a day after the Dear Boss letter.
Oh my God.
And they think that actually his editor
Okay.
and him colluded to come up with this. They wanted to sell papers. The
Of
Star
course.
was a brand new paper.
Of course.
All right. So now, in the diary, by the way, let's go back. They found a diary in 1993,
That's crazy.
and they believe that it was found when they redid the electrical work in the mansion Battle Crease under the floorboard somewhere. An electrician came up with it, or they found it in his office when they tore his office down.
Okay.
And so one or two places. But anyway, this diary comes up.
Okay.
And I want to read you something out of
Sure,
the
go
diary.
ahead.
I have taken a small room in Middlesex. I have paid well, and no questions will be asked. It's an ideal location. I have walked the streets and have become more familiar with them. I have no doubt my confidence is high. I am thrilled writing this next time for sure. I'm thrilled writing this next time for sure. So, bring up a picture of Annie Chapman, please. Annie Chapman is a short, stout, well-proportioned woman.
Okay.
She sold flowers. And to earn that 3 pence a night,
Right.
to have a roof over her head.
Yeah,
so
that's
she
crazy.
wasn't out in the rain.
Right.
There's 15,000 homeless. Sound familiar?
Yes.
All right. Now, she was, that night, Polly, they called her Polly.
Okay.
Well liked. She was at the Frying Pan Public House having a few nips. And she had been refused lodging right after that because she was short
Really?
a pence.
Oh, okay.
All right. She went off wearing her new bonnet that she had gotten the day before and to earn her room for the night.
Right.
Or her bed for the night. At 2:30 that evening, she's wandering around Whitechapel Road and she meets Jack the Ripper. At 3:40 in the morning, she's dead. Annie Chapman up there, and that hits the papers super big. Charles Carter is on his way to work when he saw what he thought was a crumpled tarpaulin, you know,
Okay,
that you
yeah.
cover up a cart or something with.
Yeah.
And it's leaning against the gates, and it's Polly Nichols.
Okay.
He finds her, and the cops are there immediately. Jack's slipped into the night again. And once again, they feel that he would negotiate with them, gain their confidence, and stand next to them in stand-up intercourse position like all the prostitutes
Right.
did in those days, and then grab her throat with both hands to keep her from screaming. Once she was unconscious, take her to the ground, and then start.
Scott, do we know if he ever had sex with any of the
None.
girls? Never had
Never had
sex. with-
sex. That's why the motive is so interesting.
Yeah,
in this
yeah, that
killing.
is. That-
no
that-
sex.
yes.
It's pure rage.
Yes.
It's pure revenge.
It has nothing to do with
pure
sex.
anger. It's everything, but it's he sees himself eviscerating, I think, a person that he knows. And this is not uncommon to sex killers
Right.
today. The Green River, or the California, is
Yes.
that the Green River? No,
Yes.
that's the Green, whatever it is.
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I
but-
know what you mean.
but
Yeah.
He was turned down by his fiance, and her dad came out with a gun, and he couldn't marry the woman he wanted. And the women that he killed
Right.
resembled the fiance he wanted to marry.
Right.
So it's not unprecedented.
So you're just what we went through so far. I'm gonna say the guy that the wife was having the affair is my main suspect right now, Scott. But that could change. We're only a half hour in.
We're only a half hour.
We're only
in,
a half hour
and
in.
I have to tell you,
All right.
Kosminski, he makes a good run for being Jack the Ripper. I mean, he is definitely knows his trade. He was a butcher.
Yeah, that's big.
You know,
Big.
he matches a little bit of the Olive description. Some people said, but I'm leaning towards what you're leaning towards. I think James Maybrick is going to make a better candidate. But
Okay.
it's up to the audience.
Right.
Would you show them where they can go vote on this once we're done, Aaron? I'd like to let you know that you can go vote on who you think Jack the Ripper really was. You are the American grand jury, and you can vote for James Maybrick. You can vote for Aaron Kosminski. I don't know if you can write in a vote, but it's possible. But it's on JackTheRipperUnmasked.com. Right up there. JackTheRipperUnmasked.com. Go and cast your vote. We would really, really love to hear your point of view on who you think Jack the Ripper was. After 135 years of an unsolved murder mystery, it's up to the American grand jury to pick who they think they would convict of this heinous crime. Crimes, sorry. Now, yes, let's take a break. Go to our commercial. We have to thank our sponsors, Sustainability Systems, Inc., for emergency storage, food, generators, all kinds of cool stuff. So if you get a chance, please patron our sponsors. They're the reason we're here. Sure, you want to be better prepared for any emergency in the uncertain world that we live in today? Sustainability Systems, Inc. has made it easier than ever before to have enough emergency storage food on hand to provide for your family. That's worry-free hunger insurance that your family will always have enough food on the table to meet any emergency. Sound good? But the budget's tight right now, right? How does less than a cup of coffee a day sound? That's just $39.95 a month, and Sustainability will send you a full bucket of delicious, ready-to-serve meals every quarter until you have built up enough storage food with a 25-year shelf life to take care of your family. Go to yourlifeboat.net. That's yourlifeboat.net. Or call us today at 1-800-713-4628. And please don't delay and be caught needing it but not having it. 1-800-713-4628. You'll thank us tomorrow.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
Okay, so 5:30 in the morning. We're talking about Annie Chapman now. And she's found by Albert Kodash. He heard a voice say no.
Okay.
And then a thump against the fence. And but he took no notice of it because a lot of stuff happens in that district, and he just walked on. So a guy named John Davis is walking into the yard and was horrified when he sees the mangled, bloodied corpse of Annie Chapman. There's some of her possessions there, but there's a little envelope, a corner of it, with the letter M on it.
Okay.
And they can't make anything of that, so it just remains in the inventory.
Okay.
The diary explains the true meaning of it. And here's what the diary says. Letter M. It's true all along. With M. Ha ha. We'll never catch clever Jim. And of course, he wanted to call himself Sir Jim.
Right.
All right. In Elizabeth's, now that is Annie Chapman.
Okay.
Would you pull up Elizabeth Stride, please? That's our next victim. Now, Elizabeth Stride. Oh, Fred Best. Anybody who's going to catch me on that? Fred Best is our the guy we're nailing for creating Jack the Ripper and writing the Dear Boss letter. So Fred Best is our guy. Oh, I see. Oh, listen. Right now, I'd like to let me explain this murder first, and then I'm going to see if we can bring on somebody who's been writing a lot of horror and a lot of crime stuff.
Good.
But I want to go through this this next one real quick. We're looking at Annie Chapman, of course. She was found on September 8th. Elizabeth Stride is going to be our next one. And this is on September 30th.
Okay.
So let's bring up Elizabeth Stride. Okay, now this is tabloid news of the day on Elizabeth Stride. And this is the double event. So
okay.
Let me explain what happens here. What we have is we've got a time when Jack the Ripper is ready to go hunting again, and he goes out on September 30th, and the first person he runs across is a lady by the name of Elizabeth Stride. And Elizabeth Stride was obviously out there working to see if she could make some money as well for her room for the night. And she was rather well known to be a prostitute in that area. And she was out late at night. So Jack the Ripper runs across her. He kills her.
Okay.
But she's in an area that carts come into the yard after they get done for the day, and there happens to be a jewelry salesman that is working his way into the yard with his horse, a guy named Louis Dimschulz.
Okay.
All right, I didn't make that up.
All right.
Louis Dimschulz, and the pony veered left,
all right,
went back, and he sees, wonders what the horse reared over, and he goes and he sees this body of Elizabeth Stride with her throat cut.
Okay.
And it's too late to save her life, but he interrupted Jack the Ripper. No more butchery on Elizabeth Stride.
Right.
So the diary, by the way, I will refer back to this because it seems like the person who's writing this diary, fake or real,
right,
has a real good insight as to what's going on. He said, I would dearly love to have cut the horse's head off and stuffed it down the bitch's throat. I find it impossible that he did not see me. I was less than a few feet from him. The fool panicked. That's what saved me.
And listen, Scott, if I can stop you there for 1 second. One thing about, we've had people confess to crimes they didn't commit. But what you got to look at is when people confess to something, you got to see if they know stuff about the crime that other people would not know.
Right.
So him talking like that makes me think he knew about the crime. He's not making something up. He was there.
He was there.
That's what's making me think.
Now I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to bring on a lady who's goes by the moniker Miss Murder.
Okay,
That'll
Miss
be
Murder.
fun.
Okay.
Miss Murder. Oh, okay. All right. I want to go though. Now we know what happened. He's frustrated. His bloodlust is up. He did not get to do his ripping and tearing that he usually likes to do, which is his thrill. And he's now on the street again, walking along.
Gotcha.
And minutes later, the police are over with Elizabeth Stride lying on her back behind the gate, and he's slipped into darkness again. He's gone away, but he's unfulfilled.
Right.
He begins to walk the street hunting for a new victim. Now, at exactly a little bit earlier than this, a lady named Catherine Eddowes, she's 46. She's being released from the Bishop Gate police station at 1 a.m.
Okay.
All right?
So she's getting released from the police station.
Right.
Gotcha.
Really, she was picked up for disorderly sleeping in the street or something, or being intoxicated in public, that kind of thing. It's 1 a.m. Now, 30 minutes later, she has arrived at an alley called Church Passage. Now, this leads into, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. If anybody in England sees this and I got it wrong, forgive me. Mitri Square, I believe.
Okay.
Mitri or Metairie Square.
I'm glad you're saying these names, Scott.
I don't know. It's English, you know. What is it? Two people separated by a common language. All right. So she crosses the path with Jack the Ripper. It's 1:35. She's seen talking to a man.
Okay.
Making sure there were no witnesses, he attacks her viciously.
Okay.
Her crumpled, mutilated body is found by the police constable Edwin Watkins. She was strangled first. Her body was slashed, actually torn apart.
Okay.
And he cut her nose off, took out her left kidney, took it with him. The womb was removed, and there were 2 puzzling V marks carved into her cheeks. And if you put the 2 V marks and turn them upside down and put them together, they create an M.
Really?
Yeah. And they never caught that clue. But that's,
Well, that would make sense. Now I'm seeing it.
yep. It was a clue that wasn't discovered until way many, many years later in the basement of the London Hospital and published for the first time in the Hospital Gazette in 1966.
So that was the only time he killed 2 people on one day.
That was his double event.
And I agree with that. He wasn't fulfilled. That's why he went after the second victim.
Exactly. Now he writes, he leaves the area, wipes his knife with her apron, a piece of her apron,
Okay.
and writes on the wall, "It is not the Jews," and he spells Jews, Juwes, "that will be blamed for nothing." So, it's scribbled though.
Right.
It wasn't until many, many, many years later, about 1966, up
Okay.
and down, they found this picture. They blow it up. No, but the thing that they looked at is his handwriting, and they looked at it, and it may not say Jews.
Right.
It may say James.
There you
It's
go.
not the James who will be blamed for nothing.
Right.
So he made leaving clues at every murder. He loved games, and he loved, taunting the police.
Right.
Similar to the Zodiac killer.
Right.
Remember?
Yep.
Okay. I would like to bring Miss Murder on.
Sure,
if
let's
that's
bring her on.
okay, and let's see what she has to say about this whole thing. Mercedes?
Yes, hello. Thank you.
On all your writing and your author, your books, and so forth, right?
Yeah, people started calling me Miss Murder in high school, and it's just
easier
easier
to
to
remember
remember
than
than Mercedes
Mercedes
Yardley.
And how long have you been writing?
About 10
About
years.
10 years?
I published
Okay.
my first book 10 years ago, yeah.
And I know this because I did a little homework. You got an award? What's the award?
Yeah,
What do you
I
write?
got the Bram Stoker Award, which is one of the main awards. And I'm actually going to show you because I have it here on my desk, and it's just really fun. It's a little haunted house
Oh, I
with a
love
little
it.
door. But I got that, and I'm actually in the running for another one this year. So we'll find out if I nail that one in May, I think. Well, right now I'm shopping around a novel called The Hunger Garden, but I just barely put out a graphic novel based on one of my original novels. It's called Pretty Little Dead Girls, a graphic novel of murder and whimsy, and it's just wonderful.
We can throw up so we can plug Miss Murder's book here.
Yeah, and the book that I sent to plug was Darling. It's a Southern Gothic that just came out. It is very, very dark and bleak, but beautiful.
Yeah.
It's quite beautiful.
Well, we're beginning to think romance here can be deadly.
Oh yeah,
It
definitely.
can be a motive for murder, for sure.
That is 100% sure. Yeah.
So, what do you think of the Jack the Ripper case overall? What are your
It's
thoughts?
fascinating. It's so fascinating, and I think it's fascinating because we have so many people that we think are suspects, right? There are
Yeah.
the original kind of 5 that you think of, or 4
Yeah.
or 5, and then there just seem to be like a
There's
bigger and bigger list.
60 or 80 of them.
Yeah, I mean everybody is related to Jack the Ripper, knows who Jack the Ripper was,
Right.
thinks they know. But what's so fascinating is that that's not something that we can prove at this point. I mean, how are we going to be able to prove it at this point? It's like
That-
over 125 years later, right?
35.
It is so ingrained in everybody's psyche, and it's terrifying and it's scary. And I don't know, something that I was talking to you briefly about before was I think it also kind of gives rise to the whole true crime thing now with all the podcasts and the shows, and everyone's like, wow, this is so gory that people are just now into this true crime thing. What's wrong with this? And it's like, no, people were fascinated back with Jack the Ripper at that time.
They
you know?
still are. It's amazing. And of course, well, they really don't ever want it completely solved, Mercedes, because you got a whole industry that's Jack the Ripper foundation of, from tours to books to podcasts to you name it. So they probably would like to have it stay in the area of unsolved. But that's why Danny and I and you are here. We are going to solve it today, and then
excellent.
destroy
We're
the whole
amazing.
industry ourselves. So, what questions do you have on Jack the Ripper? You got any questions that you'd like me to see if I can answer?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm interested in how he chose his victims, because we know, like, we've always heard that they're all prostitutes, right?
Yep,
But if
yep.
you read a book I would suggest everybody read is The Five
Yep.
by, let me get her last
Yeah,
name,
yeah,
Molly
she's good.
Rubenhold.
She's good. Yeah, said only
She is.
misogynists would think it was all prostitutes. That they weren't all prostitutes.
Right. There's no proof for 3 of the 5 women. No proof for
Right.
3 of them that
Right.
they weren't sex workers. And I think that's really interesting, because that's like the lowest name you can throw at a woman, right?
Right.
Is calling her a prostitute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it automatically degrades like these people that were brutally, horrifically murdered. And it's
Right.
kind of like, let's kick dirt in their face while we're at it, you know?
Right.
And also, by people thinking that they were prostitutes, it kind of, I think, kind of stymied the police investigation. You know, if it was somebody of higher standing,
Right.
there would be much more of a public outcry. But if it's somebody down on Whitechapel where seedy things happen, you know. So why do you think he chose people in Whitechapel? Why do you think he didn't go for something more brazen, or maybe something that would maybe get bigger headlines? I mean, it did
Well,
get headlines.
I think that the key here was that he was very opportunistic, obviously, in the victims he chose. The interesting thing about Jack the Ripper is that he never committed a murder during the week, so they figured he was holding a good 9-to-5 job down.
Right.
He only did on the weekends and way late at night. He didn't rape any of them. There's no sexual contact they can find on it.
Scott,
And-
that's what I was going to say. Is there a time that was it like I know it was over a 3-year period, correct?
No, it was, believe it or not, it was only from September of 1888 till November.
Oh, so that's it.
That's it. And
So it was only 2 months.
It was a spree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there certain times, like, was he doing it every 10 days? Was there anything like that?
It
Okay.
had to do with his medicine, which was his arsenic.
Okay.
If the candidate for Jack the Ripper is to be the one, his doctors found out through his brother, who he had told his wife had told about his arsenic addiction.
Okay.
So they started scaling him back, cutting him back, and he couldn't get it. And for the month of October, when he did nothing, he didn't feel. He just had no energy, So it wasn't until he was able to score
Gotcha.
a contact in London
Gotcha.
a chemist that gave him enough to kill a whole regiment
Okay.
of arsenic, that he started feeling his power and coming back and wanting to do it again.
I think a big question here, especially, I don't know what made me think 3 years, but you're talking 2 months. Here's the big question: why did he stop?
That we're going to do. when
Okay,
we
that-
get
that could solve the case.
Yeah, the reason that he stopped was actually very interesting.
Okay.
So we're now up to the Catherine Meadows murder, which is one of the more horrific murders, because he mails a half a kidney.
Oh my God.
I mean, half a kidney to a gentleman by the name of Lusk, who is part of the Whitechapel Vigilante Committee,
Okay.
along with a letter from hell. There's a knife, by the way. That's a knife that they found next from the Elizabeth Stride murder, and they think that may be her knife, because a lot of the prostitutes, sorry Mercedes, carried knives to protect themselves, and that knife was found. But they think it was more probably her knife, and they did in fact say there were 2 knives that were used in the murders, not just one.
Okay.
But pull that knife back up again, please. It looks like it certainly could have done the job. And they found blood stains on it and all that. And so that's in evidence over there. And you have the Catherine Meadows. Is she up there? Aaron, can you pull her up? Yeah, there's Mary Tabram, who I think was the first, and Elizabeth Stride and Mary Nichols, Polly Nichols. But let's go. Oh, now, By the way, Queen Victoria decides that she's going to issue a proclamation to catch this heinous murderer, because the news is going all the way up to her, and she knows it's a real problem, and she's trying to get it solved. Detective Aberline is a guy who's been assigned to solve this, and so that's kind of the mix of it right now. Catherine Eddowes, who's on the screen right now, she was a pretty well-liked lady, and they say she may have not been drinking that much, but only on the weekend. So she is one of those people who, like Mercedes was just saying, Miss Murder, that may not have been a full-time prostitute.
Correct.
If a prostitute at all.
Right.
So, Mercedes, what else? What other questions do you have?
I don't know. I mean, there are so many.
I think one question that comes to my mind, and I'm going as a detective. If I was going to investigate this, I was a detective for 14 years. My thing would be, like you said, Mercedes, you said, why these girls? Why these victims? Were they blonde? Were they dark haired? Was there something common of these girls?
Yes.
Other than being prostitutes?
A little bit.
Okay.
Especially on the last one.
Okay.
She resembled his wife.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Florence Maybrick.
Okay.
All right. Now, he finds out that Florence and Alfred Brierly have checked into the hotel in London.
Right.
When she's supposed to be going shopping.
Okay.
And unfortunately, she signed her own name for the rooms, and this comes back to haunt her later, big time.
Okay.
Alfred Brierly tries to cut off the relationship. It's over. We're not going to see each other anymore. It doesn't hold. They're photographed, believe it or not, with the Duke and Duchess of Wales.
Okay.
Prince of Wales, I'm sorry, and Princess of Wales.
Okay.
In Liverpool at the unveiling of the new hall for his regiment.
Okay.
And Jack the Ripper writes on that, I was only a few feet away from him. If he would known that the guy everybody in England is talking about was within 3 or 4 feet of him, he would have dropped dead right there.
Wow.
So now another thing he wrote in the diary after he killed, or the Jack the Ripper diary, after they killed Catherine Eddowes, is Elizabeth Stride, is that they found a couple of tin boxes there, and one of them had cotton stuffed in it.
Okay.
Another clue that he decided to leave, and basically he likes leaving clues. But he writes in his diary there, he says, whenever possible, I try to keep all sense of respectability, but I miss the thrill of cutting them up. I do believe I have lost my mind. The whore has destroyed everything.
Yeah.
All right. So, we're Catherine Eddowes now.
Okay.
The whole country is in an uproar over this. They're selling 1 million papers a day.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, it just goes dark for a month.
Okay.
And nothing is really happening. Detective Aberline becomes the law. Everybody's looking for him to solve it. And it's not getting solved.
Okay.
Now, we're going to move on to the last murder that they officially attribute to Jack the Ripper, and that is Mary Jane Kelly.
Okay.
Now, Mary Jane Kelly is on November 9th. So the whole month of October, nothing's going on. And he's laying low. And the reason for it is that he said he doesn't feel well. He's just not in good health. Do you see that's Catherine Eddowes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Matry Square. I mean, he really just eviscerated her. And he sends a letter from hell with a half a kidney to the editor of a paper that's the White Whitechapel Vigilante Committee. All right, and okay, now let's see, where are we at now? So anyway, we've got a month that goes by, nothing happens, everybody's kind of dying down on it, and they haven't solved the problem. Aberline is just beside himself. He's got 100 guys on the street, can't figure out who's doing this. Now, he writes in the diary, after he sends a half a kidney to George Lusk at the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. Before I am finished, all the world will know my name. I have given myself. Of course, he's adopted the name of the guy that gave it to him. What's the name? Fred.
Right.
Right. Okay. So, Mercedes, any other thoughts on the Jack the Ripper that you can think of?
Well, something I wanted to say about Mary Jane Kelly, and this is my favorite thing, and I think this humanizes these victims that we just kind of,
Sure.
Oh, they're the Jack the Ripper victims. Well, they were people and had lives and loves and all these things.
Exactly.
The night he was murdered, she was heard singing this song called "A Violet from Mother's Grave" or "A Violet Plucked from Mother's Grave."
Right.
And you can go on YouTube and find that, and it's just a very kind of haunting, lilting, kind of sweet song. And the
Right.
fact that she was singing this the night that she was murdered, I just find really touching and humanizing. So I suggest everybody go do that. Because we spend so much time on Jack because he's so fascinating, right? He's so crazy. He's so unhinged. Is he leaving clues? Is he just, just completely violent and losing his mind and not able to do that and all these things? That I really like to bring it back to the victims who were people of their own right. So
Yep.
again, that is called "A Violet from Mother's Grave," and you can just look it on YouTube. Oh, there she is. That is the worst.
Right.
That is
God.
terrible.
Oh my God.
She was the youngest of all the prostitutes, they say, the prettiest of all the victims. She is about 25 years old at the time, which is pretty much the exact age as Florence Maybrick, and actually resembled her, which may have fueled his anger when he spotted her walking down Commercial Street on November 8th, 1888. Anyway, he's... Just a second there. Can you turn that off? Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Now, she spent the afternoon, Mercedes, as she said, with her friends, and a young friend named Lizzie stopped by 13 Miller Court where Mary Jane Kelly resided. It's a 10 by 12 room, just a small room.
Okay.
I mean, that's the size of, your living room
10
or
by 10,
something,
yeah.
right? Or your den. Her parting words to her friend Mercedes was this: "Whatever you do, don't you do wrong and end up as I have." That was the last words. The neighbors heard a cry about 4 a.m. in the morning, but they did nothing about it because such cries were so common in the Whitechapel district. When Thomas Breyer and John McCarthy looked through the broken window, what they saw stayed with them for their entire lives. They could never quit talking about it because it just was the most horrific scene that just seared into their mind. She was eviscerated beyond recognition. Do you want to bring a picture up of Mary Kelly, Aaron? Okay. He writes in the diary, "I have read about my latest. My God, my thoughts. I left nothing of the bitch. Nothing. I placed it all over the room. Time was on my hands. Like the other whore, I cut her nose off. Only all of it this time. I left nothing of her face to remember her by. She reminded me of the whore, so young, unlike I," which means he's older. "I cut off her breasts and left them on the table. She ripped like a peach."
Jeez.
So I'll tell you, if somebody faked that and wrote it, he's a sick son of a
guy
bee.
too, yeah.
I'm telling you. All right, so Dr. Baxter, who did the autopsy on Mary Jane Kelly, reported it was even worse and more gruesome in the details, so they left it out for the jury, and we're going to leave it out here.
Right.
Okay. Her heart was missing.
Yeah, I saw
Gone.
that. Jeez.
Believed to be used in writing behind Mary Jane Kelly's bed the initials F and M.
F and M.
Many years later, they find this photograph of the crime scene, the bottom of the police department. They blow it up to current capabilities and enhanced it, and they see this F, a big one, and a smaller, more fainter M. Stands, they think, for Florence Maybrick.
Okay.
And he wrote it with her heart.
Jeez.
Now, when Maybrick's dying, he's calling out in his delusion and going in and out, no heart, no heart.
Right.
There you
Ugh.
go.
Ugh.
So, did you bring up the scene, please, of Mary Kelly?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, there, yes, and on the wall behind it is where they had those initials, and it's beyond mutilation. Okay, thank you. We'll go on to another slide.
You know what? You know what's surprising, Scott? That he was never seen by anybody, right?
No, he was never even suspected until the diary came out. He's the most recent suspect.
He had to be covered in blood.
Well, not he
Unless
figured
you
that
say-
out ahead of time. Well planned.
Still, though, I mean, look at that.
Right. Yes.
I mean, you would think something.
And they thought they saw the guy with a bag, a little black bag, and ever since then the bag's been connected to him. So anybody who walked through Whitechapel with a bag was a
That
cost.
was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
All right.
And also, think about it too. There was no lighting in that particular area. When you see like pictures, it's usually Jack the Ripper with these like gas lights and gas
Right.
lamps, and it looks all neat. But the particular areas where they were, there wasn't public lighting like that. That's why people were soliciting there, you know? So, I mean, it was really easy to go undiscovered and unnoticed. It was just dark.
Exactly. And you got 100 police officers. You got all of Scotland Yard. You got the other police department, Metro. You have detectives, sleuths, private investigators. You got the Queen's security looking for this guy.
Right.
They got all these people and nothing. And the reason I think that is because he was smart enough not to do anything in Liverpool.
Right.
If he had done one thing in Liverpool, they'd have connected him to it.
Right.
He would ride the train down on the weekends, do his heinous deeds, go back and assume this thing of respectability. Can you pull up, I don't know if you can see this this book, but can you pull up a picture of Maybrick, please? Yeah. And here's what he writes. He writes in his diary, an initial here, an initial there will tell the whoring mother, referring to the F&M left on the wall, but left undiscovered until 1988 by a crime researcher, Simon Wood. So never underestimate the amateur sleuth.
Yes.
So the diary was either a very, very late fake or it had to be genuine.
Right.
Okay. Now,
Do we have any? Did he ever? Do we have any knowledge that he stalked his prey, like before he killed them?
I think he may have followed some of them for quite a while. And
Okay.
when I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking Mary Kelly.
Okay.
Mary Jane Kelly. I think he saw her on Commercial Street. She resembled his wife.
Okay.
And I think he was going to follow her to the ends of the earth to kill her.
Okay.
I mean, that in his mind, you know, she was a mother of all horrors, his
Right.
wife, for cheating on him.
Right.
You know, pretty Victorian. You know, by the way, adultery was the worst crime that could be committed in Victorian society. You committed adultery,
Right.
that's as bad as it got back then.
Yeah.
You might as well have committed murder.
And that's what I was thinking when I'm saying, was he stalking? Did he go out and say, listen, tonight I'm going to go kill somebody and then go find somebody to kill? Or did he stalk these women before? Do you know what I mean?
No, he went out. Tonight
An
I'm going to go kill
opportunist.
somebody, looking opportunistically.
Yep.
Because he lived in another town, he only had so much time. His brother, Michael, who is a very famous, by the way, music writer,
Okay.
and well known in England, he would stay at his house. Now, he took a double dose of his medicine
Okay.
the night before on the 6th, and it almost killed him.
Okay.
And it seared into his brain the pain, but it gave him that power and energy. He says, I was supposed to go back to Liverpool, but I went one day later.
Gotcha.
And he writes in the diary, if I was in the city of whores, I would do my fiendish deeds at this very moment. Once more, I'll be the talk of London. Now, he has a terrible fight with his wife. Terrible fight. She gets a black eye. Alfred Brierly is trying to get out of the picture. But despite their disagreement, not to see each other again, of course, they end up seeing each other again, and they end up at that Prince of Wales thing, and it continues. Now, here's the interesting thing. And I think this fascinates me the most out of the whole case,
Okay.
Mercedes. He goes to visit his brother's doctor, who changes his prescription just a little bit,
Okay.
but talks to him for an hour, tells him to come back. Now, he goes back to London, comes back, does the thing, but sees Dr. Fuller again. Now, this is after the Mary Jane Kelly. He's gone back again, and he's saw his brother and did all, and he's ready to go out and strike again. But he said, Dr. Fuller put such strange thoughts in my mind that I did not have the heart to strike. He wandered the streets of Whitechapel, but he did not have the heart to strike. He writes in the diary, I did not have it in my heart to strike. Visions of my dear Bunny, that was
Okay.
her nickname,
Yep.
overwhelmed me. I still love her, but how I hate her. She has destroyed all, and yet my heart aches for her. Oh, how it aches. I do not know what pain is worse, that of my heart or that of my head. Can you bring up a picture of Florence Maybrick, please? That's a diary. That's their house.
Okay.
And Florence should be down a little further. Okay, keep going, keep going. There's Jane. There's it. She was a beauty. His older brother had written her something like 9 love letters that the younger brother did away with, so he wouldn't get caught up in it. She was gorgeous for the time,
Right.
and he was horribly in love with this woman, and that fueled his desire for revenge and hate and all the other things. I think that's my feeling about it anyway. When he says, "I do not know what pain is worth, that of my heart or that of my head," that's pretty
Yes.
pretty strong. Now, he has the idea. There's the letter from hell, by the way. That's the one that was sent with a half a kidney. Now that is Jack the Ripper. The Dear Boss letter was not Jack the Ripper. This one came later. The Dear Boss, can you see the difference in the handwriting?
Yes.
So even, so right, no emotion in it. Now go back to the for hell letter, from hell. There's emotion in this.
Right.
And the psychologists that have looked at it said this is a tortured soul,
Right.
a psychopath. Okay, now, he goes back to Dr. Fuller one more time, and he said, I don't have the heart to strike. He did, by the way, in between the 2 trips, he went to Manchester, where he said in the diary he killed his first.
Okay.
Didn't cut her, but killed her.
Okay.
Said, I knew I left her for dead. First one in Manchester. Then he goes back and he kills another. So now he's 2 in Manchester, plus Martha Tabram. Now we're up to 8.
Okay.
But he said, I did not have the heart. He said there was no thrill in it. There was no emotion in it. I couldn't cut her. So
Right.
anyway, he decides he's going to throw his knife into the river, which I don't know if the Mersey is across from Battle Creek Mansion or what river it is, but supposedly in the diary, he goes ahead and throws his knife into the river. The killings are over. Now, he writes, I shall return to Battle Creek with the knowledge I can no longer continue my campaign. By the way, there's the diary of Jack the Ripper they found in 1993 under the floorboards of that house or in his office. or by some descendant. They don't know how exactly it all got there, but they've been trying to disprove this for the last 20 years.
Right.
Through ink, through age of the
To see if he
the
wrote.
binding, through exactly the chemicals. They cannot disprove it. And then they find the watch. You see the watch up there?
Yeah.
That, a guy went to a pawn shop, gets it, and when he's cleaning it, he looks on the inside. Can you go to on the inside, it has scraped in there, etched into it, I am Jack, and the initials of all the people killed, signed James Maybrick.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I'm no detective, but if I came across that and the diary, I would start to say those are some pretty good clues.
I think it is.
Okay, now, he writes in the diary, "'Tis love that spurned me so, and it is love that shall put an end to it." So he writes, Flory actually writes him a letter begging his forgiveness for her wayward ways and saying, "I have not enough sufficient self-respect left to help lift me up." This is from one of her letters that they found.
Okay.
"To lift me up from the disgrace to which I have fallen. Please forgive me, and if you can, dear husband, think less poorly of me. Your loving wife, Bunny." So these guys have reconciled, but meanwhile, they've torn England apart, killed at least 8 women, and it's not going to turn out well.
Wow.
All right?
And she was 18, he was 42?
When they got married. So, then they had a couple kids, and now he turned 50.
Okay.
He just turned 50, I think, what day did he turn 50? Just recently. Don't know. I think it was in December that he turned 50. Anyhow, now he decides to confess everything to her. Mistake.
Okay.
If you do something wrong, don't tell mama.
Right.
Keep it to yourself. Isn't that a long
Yes.
tradition?
Yes.
Staying out of trouble?
Yes.
All right. Well, you agree with that, Mercedes, or no?
I mean, if you killed over 8 women, I think you should be held accountable for it. So,
All right. Well, so we got to hold this guy accountable. He tells mama. Not a good idea, but he begs her to kill him.
Okay.
Poison me. I hope, he writes in her, I hope she has the strength. I think, here's what he writes. He confesses all to Bunny and asks her to give him enough of his medicine to end it all. He prays she has enough courage to do it. April 15th, 1888. Florence goes to the chemist and buys a dozen fly papers
Okay.
loaded with arsenic.
Okay.
The maid, Bessie, was puzzled to see the wash basin covered with a towel,
Okay.
and peeked underneath it. She saw the fly paper soaking. She's getting all the arsenic out of it.
Right.
The next morning, all the papers are in the trash. She's not catching a lot of flies.
Okay.
James Maybrick dies on May 11th, 1888. So he started his campaign on September 8th, maybe a little before because he killed that woman in Manchester.
Okay. Okay.
So let's say he started it in September. Let's say he started it in August.
Okay.
Or maybe even July of that year. Now it's only May.
And he's gone already.
He's dead. He's dead. Now, he doesn't die an easy death. He dies a slow death. And an agonizing death because he can't get his medicine.
Right.
And as the chemists say, your last dose of arsenic
Is your last
your
dose.
last dose.
Right.
So he was on his way out when they cut him off.
Right.
He begs her, please kill me. She takes some meat juice, puts a little arsenic in it, sets it next to his table. But his brother's there. He's suspicious. Michael. The maids are suspicious now.
Okay.
They remove the meat juice before he drinks it.
Okay.
But he dies anyway. And his brother's suspicious that she poisoned him, although he's a drug addict on the same stuff for a decade or more.
Okay.
He accuses her. And puts her in her room and will not let her see the children, and tells the staff she's no longer the mistress of the house. Now, he dies a horrible death. It's not a good one, which is exactly what Jack the Ripper ought to get, by the way.
Right.
But his brother now, who is a learned musician, goes to the inspector and the doctor who's doing the autopsy and takes control of the whole thing and blames her.
Okay.
The housekeeper, who didn't like her anyway, gives the love letters from Alfred Brierly to the detectives. Michael gets rid of the 9 letters from his older brother and tells him to leave England so he don't get caught up in it. And the solicitor, who had also sent her many love letters, those disappeared as well. And he did not even drink the meat juice, but guess who's going to take the fall?
She is.
Exactly. Now, they don't know he's the Ripper,
Okay.
so they accuse her of being an adulteress who poisoned
Her husband.
Okay. Now, what do you think of that, Mercedes?
That's amazing.
Now she's in the hot seat. You know, won't let her see her kids. Can't believe that. Okay, she's charged with her husband's murder because they found a half a grain in his meat chute by the table. Half a grain. That wouldn't have even killed him.
Right.
That would have been 1/4 of a dose that he liked to take anyway,
He
just to
took
feel
anyway,
good.
yeah.
She was either trying to make him feel good, which is what I think, because
Right.
he was suffering so bad,
Right.
or it wasn't enough to kill him.
Right.
Now, they go search the house. Everybody goes through the house. They find enough arsenic to kill 3 regiments. Mostly his.
Right.
But some saying for the cats and,
Right.
da-da-da-da. So, they put her in front of a judge that has some connections to this case that I'm not really all that up on. But he decides she's guilty.
Okay.
Of course he does.
He decides it's misogynist. There's only
Right.
guys in the jury.
Right.
It's completely run by men. I like what the lady said the other day. She said, then we got the vote. Now we can vote for men to tell us what to do. So there you go. So anyway, this is back when men ran it all.
Right.
Okay. She's found guilty. They withheld a lot of the evidence. The judge wouldn't show a lot of the evidence. And there's, by the way, James Maybrick's grave. Kind of spooky, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. He is, that's where he's buried. I think the cemetery, I can't hardly
I don't know.
make it out. But there's a cemetery there that's pretty famous, and he's buried right there. So anyway, she's found guilty. They don't like to hang women back then. That's the good part of it, Mercedes.
Oh, I'm terrified to think what is preferable to hanging. What did they like to do?
Guillotine, you name it. They had all this torture stuff probably ready to go. But she's beautiful. She's young. She's a woman. They decide they can't hang her. They commute her sentence to a lifetime in prison.
Okay.
And she is remanded to prison, one of the worst in the country, of course. And there she remained for 14 years until they review the case and find out there's nothing to the case. They didn't have enough arsenic. He didn't drink it. They decide it was a kangaroo court and they should not have convicted her. All right. So she gets out. And the Ripper slips into history and legend.
Okay.
And there it stays. While every amateur sleuth, every author, every investigator, Aberline thinks he knows who it is. The head of Scotland Yard writes it's probably Kaminsky.
Right.
They put him in an insane asylum.
Right.
Even though he had never hurt anybody.
Right.
Never really, he just was schizophrenic and threatened a bunch of people and he was nuts. But
he never hurt anybody.
never hurt anybody. All right. And we know Tumbletti, he's over in America selling his Indian juice.
Okay.
And, trying to make a little money with his snake oil. All right. So she gets out of prison 14 and a half years later. Never got a chance to see her kids once. Not once. They grow up, raised by a solicitor. Her son becomes an engineer. Her daughter gets married. Her son becomes a mining engineer and actually accidentally drinks a clear glass of what he thinks water, and it's strychnine.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
He dies
jeez.
immediately. She goes and tries to tell her story and actually writes a book about her life in prison and dies penniless
Oh, my gosh.
somewhere outside of Pennsylvania or Illinois in a small town. Penniless. She never got to see her kids once. And so that ends the James Maybrick tragic love story, but also, I think, gives real motive to the mystery and the motive behind why to kill these women. Why? What was the reason for it? People just don't go out and slaughter people for no reason.
Right.
You have to have a motive. So that's what kind of compelled me. Do you have a picture of the book, The Diary of Jack the Ripper? A lot of books. I don't know how many have been written on Jack the Ripper. There's the diary. Interesting, by the way, if you ever get a chance, you can, it's at the back of this book, Jack the Ripper. Fascinating reading. And if anybody could write that as a fake, I would like to give them an award for writing the most compelling fake, what do you call it?
Biographies?
What do you do when you fake something? A
Hoax?
A hoax, right? That has ever been perpetrated
Hoax, yeah.
on this world. But, you know, everybody's suspicious since the Adolf Hitler diaries, you know. Nobody believes anything. They're trying their best. By the way, they did a DNA test on the shawl they think was a shawl of Catherine Eddowes and came up with, it's a relative of Aaron Kaminsky. And that was just in 2017 or something. So all the papers grabbed on it. We've solved it. No longer a mystery. Aaron Kaminsky did it. But what they failed to say is that it was mitochondrial DNA that was supposed to say what family it came from. And there were so many thousands of them that they couldn't say for sure that it was Catherine Eddowes or his. And that kind of DNA can only rule out suspects.
Yeah.
It can't rule them in.
Right.
So the Kaminsky thing kind of died there. They are doing their best to try to make this diary and prove that it's a fake and a hoax. But
to me, Scott, I think he got to be the main suspect because nobody just stops killing. Okay,
No.
Especially a serial killer, and him being dead, that makes me convinced it's him. Honestly, my vote's going for him.
I'm getting close to voting for him myself. Can we get a commercial here and take a break?
Right back?
Sure, you want to be better prepared for any emergency in the uncertain world that we live in today. Sustainability Systems, Inc. has made it easier than ever before to have enough emergency storage food on hand to provide for your family. That's worry-free hunger insurance that your family will always have enough food on the table to meet any emergency. Sound good? But the budget's tight right now, right? How does less than a cup of coffee a day sound? That's just $39.95 a month, and Sustainability will send you a full bucket of delicious, ready-to-serve meals every quarter until you have built up enough storage food with a 25-year shelf life to take care of your family. Go to yourlifeboat.net. That's yourlifeboat.net. Or call us today at 1-800-713-4628. And please don't delay and be caught needing it but not having it. 1-800-713-4628. You'll thank us tomorrow.
Go Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
We're back. Thank you. Mercedes, can you hear me? Mercedes.
I can't.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Any additional thoughts now that Maybrick's in the grave and she's in prison? And
Oh, I just think that's a tragic story on her part, especially. But that is really interesting. That's a suspect I'd never heard of before.
yeah.
Reading some of this, and there's a lot of things to back it up, but of course we'll never know.
Right. No, they're always
But
going to leave that little margin for possibility of being somebody else. I like the watch. The watch they proved was a London jeweler in the 1880s. They did a proton test on the age and the when it could have been etched, and they said it had to be over 90 years for the ink, and the watch was in the 1880s. So you had to be a pretty smart forger. That's a word I was looking for, to be able to come up with a proton, because it takes a very, very specific skill set to be able to use a proton telescope and figure out exactly what all those components are in the metals. So basically, I think that's some hard evidence. And if you take it all together, you go, hey, it's adding up. If I was on the jury, I think I had a pretty good idea, and that's what we're trying to do here. Let's give everybody all the evidence. It's now 2023. This is a 135-year-old mystery. The Ripper got away with it, never served one day in jail, slipped into legend, slipped into history, killed a bunch of women, 8 at the least, 11 at the most, and it's time that he was brought to justice. Everybody out there, go and vote at Jack the Ripper Unmasked.com. That's Jack the Ripper Unmasked.com. And let's rack this thing up. Is it Kaminsky? Is it Maybrick? And let's see if we can bring this thing to a conclusion in the next 30 minutes. All right. Now, we know that Carl Feigenbaum was a convicted killer, but he may have been too tall to be the guy. They would have noticed him. Aaron Kaminsky, no proof he ever harmed anybody. But Francis Tumblety, a medical con man who hated prostitutes and kept a weird collection of uteruses. And, of course, James Maybrick, a respectable English gentleman, a successful cotton merchant who lived in Liverpool, had a beautiful young wife half his age and 2 children. You got to decide. Okay, so that's basically the story. I don't think any of this could have had a chance of being solved without dozens and dozens of authors like Mercedes.
Oh, yeah.
Like M.J. Troe, who's written all these books. And if you go on, you'll see dozens and dozens and dozens. All we're doing is standing on the shoulders of some wonderful, wonderful researchers and authors and amateur sleuths who have spent, 1966, they find the F&M on the wall.
Right.
By blowing up the photograph. 1993, they find the diary. 1988, they put out the book and the documentary. Then they find the watch in 2003. And there's still people out there hooking the clues up. If he went to trial today, what do you think, Danny?
Listen, I would think I think it's definitely the last guy we talked about, because my biggest thing is serial killers just don't stop. They only stop when they're dead.
Right.
Or they're too old to do it anymore. And I would say that him being dead makes me think it's him. That's what stopped the murders.
Yep. And the month
Honestly.
he was sick, he just wasn't up to the task.
Right.
That's basically my thought as well, is that this guy is such a good candidate for it. Oh, the interesting thing, a couple of interesting points on this is he was a bit of a hypochondriac because he needed his medicine, so he had to go to a lot of doctors to get enough of it to make him happy. He had 70 doctor appointments in 1988.
Oh my God.
Not one of them conflicts with a time when somebody was murdered. He was either in London at the time, or he didn't miss
wow.
a doctor's appointment. So there's no conflicting time.
Right.
What is the odds of that?
That not good.
Not good.
Not good. That's why, I mean, it all fits to him, I would say.
I would say he's a prime candidate.
Prime.
I'm looking at a list of candidates, and they go from Sherwin Kioski, George Chapman, that's a guy we showed you, and Aaron Kaminsky, obviously, and Michael Ostrong, and we got Francis Tumbley, we got James Sadler, Thomas Neal Crean, he was William Henry Burry, Frederick Bailey Deming, Carl Fagenbaum, that's it. But these are the prime ones. Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence. But he had an ironclad alibi.
Okay.
So I think we can dismiss a lot of these.
Oh, yeah.
And come down to the ones that we think have a motive. There's evidence. They were living or in the vicinity at the time and were suspected by the police at the time because they were not totally incompetent.
Right.
They knew something. I mean, they wouldn't have wrote Kaminsky's name in the side of the Scotland Yard book unless they thought it was him. They would not have followed Tumblety to America and sent detectives unless they thought it was him.
Right.
So they had to be doing some kind of job.
Right.
And I just don't think they thought this was a guy who was coming in and doing it on the weekends.
Right.
You
And he
know.
was.
Exactly. So that's basically it. I got some articles on the identified DNA evidence just not holding up.
Okay.
We still cannot confirm the identity of Jack the Ripper, and they don't even know if the shawl belonged to Catherine Eddowes, that kind of stuff. So basically, that's our case. We've got a guy who married a beautiful woman half his age, was already a drug addict,
Right.
became insane when she started fooling around on him.
And I would say taking arsenic's going to make you some insane too, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it'll have an effect.
Yes.
Exactly. I think without the drugs, there may not be a Ripper case.
Yes.
This guy was a drug addict.
Yes.
And, so I think it all adds up to a pretty good case. I'd like to think that after all this time, somebody gets held accountable for this.
Yeah.
And if the American grand jury, will you put that up again, please, Aaron, where they can go to vote on this? And now, one thing I'd like to go into now. What's the aftermath of all this? Go to Jack the Ripper, Unmasked.com, and let us know, who is it? Is it James Maybrick or is it Aaron Kaminsky who did this? And let's nail it. See if we can at least indict this guy, if not convict him.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about the aftermath.
Phone lines are open.
Oh,
yeah.
phone lines are open. We'll take calls.
Yeah. 702-329-6947. 702-329-6947.
Okay, the aftermath.
Okay.
Whitechapel gets cleaned up. They realize the problem.
Okay.
They tear down the slums. Do you have a picture, Aaron, of the alley of Whitechapel today? Jack the Ripper Alley. It's all the way down towards the bottom. And
Keep talking up on it.
yeah, anyway, they cleaned all that up.
Right.
They got rid of the 64 brothels. That's the up one more, a couple up from that one. Oh, pull that picture up of the women that actually. This is how many people they think Jack actually killed. There's 8 up there, right?
Right.
So there were more, and it could have been as high as 11. So the 5 is not just it. There were more women that were murdered by Jack than just. I think it's the 8 myself, but could be more. Could be more. Okay, that's what Whitechapel looked back then. Here's what it looks like today.
Wow.
If he can, there it is.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I
Oh,
would
my
walk down
God.
that street.
Yeah, it's
Mercedes,
beautiful.
would you walk down that street?
I have walked down that street. Yes.
have you
wow.
really? Okay. Jack the Ripper Alley. Okay, cool. So
I was not ripped even once.
there you go. Were you hit on? Did anybody hit on you and say, let's go have a drink at
Well,
the pub?
I was 17, so
Oh,
yeah.
okay. There you go. So it changed a lot. Now we have tabloid news. It's with us today. The Monica or the motto is, if it bleeds, it leads.
Okay.
So they like all the blood on the headlines they can get due to Jack the Ripper.
Right.
We've had, how many serial killers have we had in the last 2 years from these
Well,
mass
they
shootings?
say
Yes,
that
true.
in America alone,
Yes.
there are 70 active serial killers at any time in America alone.
Wow.
Really?
I'll just throw that out there.
Wow.
I think-
70 active. Okay.
I think you're going to start looking at the Idaho guy. I think
Yeah.
they're looking into him. I don't know if you know this, and I just did a TikTok video. They actually found an ID from one of the victims when they did the search warrant.
Yeah.
And they found that at his parents' house, and the ID was in a glove in a box.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So here's the thing. We don't know. The police are looking. Serial killers usually take gifts from their victims. They
Yeah.
take items from their
Right.
victims, right? So could he got this ID? Could they have found other IDs?
What's his motive? He was a guy studying
Criminology.
Was
Yes.
he just seeing?
He was
and
trying to get a
was
master's
interested
in
in
it.
serial killers.
Yes.
And he wanted to know what they thought about when they followed him. Do you think it just got too far?
I think it got too far with this guy. Yes,
Yeah, I
I
do
do.
too.
I think he's very strange.
Do you think that all these people from, we got Bundy, we got the Green River Killer, we
Right.
got the California State, the Highway Killer, we got all these, the Night Stalker. Most of them killed a lot more than Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
I mean, 8 really hardly gets him into the contention.
Right.
Do you consider these people that are taking AR-15s and killing 6, 8, 10 people, are they serial killers, or are they just one-time mass killers?
Here's the thing. I actually, believe it or not, I specialize in this. I've actually taught active shooter.
Okay.
I've trained 10,000 or more people on how to survive these incidents. These people that do active shooting, believe it or not, they believe this is going to make them famous.
Right.
They really
notoriety.
do.
And he did too. I pretty soon everybody in England's gonna know my name. So
Right.
there's always that aspect of I'm becoming famous.
And listen, one thing, Scott, that people don't realize with these active shooters, they actually plan their attack for years in advance. As sick as it sounds, they want to be successful, because the more people they kill, the more famous they believe they're going to be. So
Exactly.
I've studied all of them, and that's how they feel.
That's the motivation.
Yes.
And the desire to be important is one of the most strong desires we have. I think I don't know what the lineup is, but it starts with food, shelter, sex.
Right.
The desire to be important is right up there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why they do it. They
Yes.
want to be somebody. They don't want to
Right.
go through this life and not be noticed. So,
Exactly.
yeah, that's a lot of it. That's why you don't hear their names much
Anymore.
Yeah.
They should stop doing it.
Right. Do we have?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What do you think of this new movement of not naming the shooters? I think
I
that is
like it.
wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love
no.
it.
Movement of focusing on the victims and
Yes.
not the shooters, like the shooter, and not giving their name. I think that's wonderful.
Right.
Exactly. Can we go to another break, and then we'll wrap this up after the break?
Sure, we'll be right back.
Sure, you want to be better prepared for any emergency in the uncertain world that we live in today? Sustainability Systems, Inc. has made it easier than ever before to have enough emergency storage food on hand to provide for your family. That's worry-free hunger insurance that your family will always have enough food on the table to meet any emergency. Sound good? But the budget's tight right now, right? How does less than a cup of coffee a day sound? That's just $39.95 a month, and Sustainability will send you a full bucket of delicious, ready-to-serve meals every quarter until you have built up enough storage food with a 25-year shelf life to take care of your family. Go to yourlifeboat.net. That's yourlifeboat.net. Or call us today at 1-800-713-4628. And please don't delay and be caught needing it but not having it. 1-800-713-4628. You'll thank us.
So Live Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
Well, welcome back. Anybody who wants to call, what's our number, Aaron? That's right, 702-329-6947. Glad to try to answer any questions you might have on this case. I would like to, Danny being a detective for many years and retired detective, he doesn't look his age, I'll tell you. I'd like to have him he's gotten a lot of information here. He did not really have that much information on the Ripper case, but we've presented a lot here. I'd like to have him kind of pull together, if he was a lead detective, if he was the Aberline of his day. By the way, Jack the Ripper wrote, I see Aberline running in front of thousands of people with a hangsman's noose. Ugh. So he had horrible nightmares. He saw the women gushing of blood, and he was a really tortured soul. He paid a price for his crimes. He really did.
Right.
But Danny, sum this up. If I brought this all to you and said solve this case, what would you look at?
Okay. If you're bringing this to me and saying, Danny, this is a cold case, which it is, okay, where it's never been solved.
Right.
This is what I would look at. You're always looking for a motive, okay? So Maybrick, am I saying his name right? Maybrick?
Yeah, Maybrick's right.
He had a motive. His motive was his wife having the affair.
Right.
Okay. So that was his motive.
Right.
And then you got to ask yourself, did he have the ability to commit the crime?
Right.
Of course he did. And the reason is, you just said it, all his doctor's appointments, nothing stopped him. There was nothing to say, oh, he couldn't have done this because he was here or he was there.
Right.
So there was motive. There was the ability to commit the crime. And honestly, you guys, I'm going to say this again, but to me, it's huge. Serial killers just don't stop murdering. Now, some of them have stopped for years and then went back to it, right?
Right.
Some serial killers. This murder's totally stopped because he is dead. Right. That's my feeling. My feeling, if I looked at this case and everything you gave me today, there is only one suspect, and that's Maybrick. That's my opinion.
Well, I think he's a very good suspect. And he has something at the end of the diary that said, this shall be found. And he actually had a crest where they do your family crest.
Right.
And his crest translate into time will tell.
Right.
That's what his crest translates. And he said, I hope all that pass here will try to forgive me and define this, try to forgive me and remember I was once born a gentleman.
Wow.
And Jack the Ripper. That's at the end of the diary. So
wow.
That
surely sounds like he wrote it. It really does. It really does.
To me, at least he's, what do they call it when you're remorseful?
Yes.
Or, how did I get here? Or,
like repentant.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think he, like he said, love spurred me on and love got me to stop. And he said, it's destroyed my life. But whoever reads this, I hope they understand that at one point in my life, I was a gentleman.
Wow.
So yours truly, Jack the Ripper. And
did the police ever interview her? She went to jail for the 14 years, but did they ever, did she ever say anything that she was suspicious of him?
Oh, see, that's what's weird. Because, I think she did kill him.
Okay.
Because he wanted her to.
Okay.
So I would have thought, well, he begged her to do it.
Right.
She did the fly paper.
Right.
She would have done it because if he was caught, her life's destroyed, her children's life destroyed, and he knew it.
Right.
And he cared for his children, believe it or not, and he cared for her at the end. And he had taken out a $2 million life insurance policy.
Okay.
2,000 pounds or whatever the hell it was. A lot of money back then.
All right.
And he had a 500, so she wouldn't have got that if he had been caught and convicted of murder.
Okay.
So I think that's what he wanted. I think she tried to do it. I don't think she was successful.
Right.
I think she wanted to help him. She wanted to help him cross over and pay the price for his crimes. And, of course, in the back of her mind probably was, you know, what's his name, Brierly,
Right.
Alfred, you know, somewhere off there, because
Yeah.
she never got over him, and she probably thought this was the best for everybody,
Right.
you know. But I honestly don't think he was sick for days. They were watching him every minute of the time.
Right.
There was no way she could slip in there and do it, but I think he died because of lack of his medicine. He
Right.
died, and she took the fall because that's what her intention was. That's why she bought the flypaper.
Right.
That's why she made the meat juice,
Right.
but it wasn't her.
Right.
Wrongly
Well, and
convicted.
let's say that he is Jack the Ripper and she's Jack the Ripper's wife.
Right.
Right? Would she suspect that? Would she be doing the area a favor by killing him?
Oh, certainly.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
how would that
doing
be?
the world
Yes.
a favor, and him.
Yes.
And,
I am-
and a good wife would do it. A
Yes.
good wife that you beg to kill you would probably kill you. And in fact, a bad wife who you beg to kill you probably would kill you.
Well, and if you're an
Even
insane
average wife
murderer,
would kill you.
Yes.
murdering
For
people
no
on the street,
reason. Yeah.
like I am really interested in the dynamics of living with a serial killer. Like if you research the serial killers and
Yeah.
Ted Bundy's girlfriend and BTK's wife and family. And I wrote a story called A Pretty for Polly. It's in Tales of Jack the Ripper by it's edited by Ross Lockhart's Word Horde,
Sure.
where Jack the Ripper has a daughter, and that kind of how that is, that juxtaposition of I hate women but I have a child that's a girl,
Sure.
sort of thing. I mean, I'm so interested in that and what it would be like would his wife suspect, or is he married, or what would it be like to live with somebody that can turn their personality like that on a dime,
Well,
like to go, the idea when you mentioned that he's out there when he has like a 9 to 5 job or whatnot, whatever the equivalent was back then, like the idea of going to work and having this successful life and then going out and murdering people on the weekends is just so hard
Bizarre.
to fathom. But I
And
love
think-
that because people do it, and
Mercedes-
people live with people that do it. What is that like? That's what I'm really interested in.
These serial killers like Maybrick, or Bundy, or the California highway killer,
Yeah.
they have families. They never suspected of it.
Right.
And he says, I try my best. He said, I think I'm going insane. I try my best to keep some sense of respectability. He says, I don't do anything near my home.
Right.
He loves his kids, and he's tormented by the fact that he doesn't care so much about them when he's ready to go do these things. He puts them out of his mind. So, yes, they had money problems. That never helps a marriage. She
Right.
racks up big debts with
Right.
parties and shopping, and he's got to go pay them off. He's pissed about it.
Right.
And especially when she's taking those clothes and going visiting Alfred for the weekend.
Right.
So they're in debt, they're fighting, she's got a black eye, there's domestic violence, he's a drug addict, money problems. On the weekends, he's out killing people. He's just your, average dysfunctional family, except for going out and killing people.
Well, and didn't Dennis Rader, I think it was Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, who actually took his son a couple times, like had him sleep in the car while he went and like murdered somebody, and his kid was just asleep in the car, just time
Oh.
with dad. I mean, I think that's just unfathomable and insane, and it happens. I think that's just crazy.
Well, the key thing about these serial killers is that they hide under that cloak of respectability. Even if they're not way up in society like he was back then, they're your everyday walk
Yes.
down the street kind of guy.
Yes.
They got a job. They got jobs.
And they might not even have a criminal record.
right.
No criminal record, nothing.
They got to be the hardest killer to catch that
Yes.
there is. And in fact, they profiled Jack the Ripper a few times, and the sketch of Jack the Ripper comes up looking at almost exactly like Maybrick,
Right.
only with a bowler hat rather than the top hat.
Right.
The sketch does. The other thing is that the psychological profile. By the way, you know what psychological for a husband and wife, what that means is that she's psycho and he's logical.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's great being a woman. I'll tell you that straight up.
All right, so that's a psychological thing of married people. But they come up with a profile pretty well matches this guy.
Right.
So that was the first time a profile was ever done was on Jack the Ripper.
Right.
They had clairvoyants try to catch this guy. They had everything they could come up with to try to catch Jack the Ripper, and he eluded everybody. You have to be a little smart
Oh, of course.
to be able to get away with 8 murders and nobody ever suspect you. Not until 1993.
Wow.
That is, it's beyond belief. But do you ever tell you how many unsolved murders go on in the United States or serial killings? You ever hear anything like that?
Listen, the only thing I could tell you is murder is probably the most convictable offense.
Right.
Because they leave so much evidence. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So I would say, even though, yes, there's a lot of unsolved homicides, most are solved.
Okay.
I would say
And it's
that.
usually somebody they know.
Yes, it's usually somebody. And you think about serial killers, it's just a thought in my head. You think they all act alone, but if you think about it, think about the DC sniper. Remember that? There was
Yeah.
2 of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Usually it's just one, but the DC snipers was a juvenile and an adult, if you remember that. Do you remember that back in the
Right.
day?
Yes, they do.
They were shooting people.
So serial killers are different than mass murderers because mass murderers just do one big
Yes.
thing and it's over.
And most mass murderers, like for the thing, they know that's probably the last day of their life. They're okay with it too because they believe they're going to be famous. They know they're either going to kill themselves or the police are going to kill them. And they're cool with it because they believe they're going to be famous. Believe me, I studied these guys. I studied the Virginia Tech, the Columbine kids, all of them, and they believe they're going to be famous. And they're okay with dying that day. They're okay with it.
If anybody wants to call in to 702-329-6947. We'll answer your questions. We're about to wrap the show up. The show is Jack the Ripper Unmasked, a love story, and I think that title holds up.
I agree.
I think the title holds up. Have we been able to unmask Jack the Ripper? That's up to you to decide.
I think
All
we
we
did.
did was present the evidence and give you who we think our prime suspects are. We like Kaminsky. We like James Maybrick especially well as being Jack the Ripper. We think the evidence points in that direction, but it could be somebody else. It could be Carl Fagenbaum. I don't think it's Tumbletti.
No.
He's just too weird. But it could be somebody else. And maybe there's a writer or an investigator or a sleuth out there that is going to come up with a piece of evidence that's going to turn us all 180 degrees around and say, you guys were just all wet. This is the guy who did it. And maybe, according to Mercedes, it could be Jane the Ripper.
Yeah, I'd love for it to be a woman.
Equal opportunity serial killing going on. So, yeah, Jane the Ripper. They got a book out, I think, about that possibility.
I'm working on a story right now where that's
a
kind of
possibility.
where-
Okay, we want you got to have a podcast on it when you have it ready to go, and then Danny and I will launch it. We are going to wrap this up now, I think, and have one more commercial. Please, the sponsors are Sustainability Systems Inc. .com, or you can go to yourlifeboat.com. Check it out. Some cool stuff. Everybody ought to be prepared in these dicey times, I tell you. You never know when Putin's going to wake up grumpy. And, we're poking the Chinese bear, and, the food supply, you never know when that's going to get disrupted. So be prepared. Do yourself a favor. Have the peace of mind of having, 90 days of food on hand. It's just good security and common sense. So sustainabilitysystems.inc.com or yourlifeboat.com. Don't forget to check into the crime solver with Danny Miner. He knows his stuff. It's on Wednesday at what time, Danny?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. If you get a chance, check out MJ Tro's book. Remember, we did all this at GoLiveVegas.com. GoLiveVegas.com. Go live. Don't forget that dot. You won't pull it up if you don't. GoLive.Vegas. Got a lot of great shows on it. A great place for podcasts in Vegas. coming up all the time. Going to be one of the premier podcast stations in the country pretty soon. And Mercedes, she's got some books out that we put up there. Buy them, and we'll have her on the next show that Danny and I do and launch it.
Be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
We're going to run a couple of commercials and bow out. And for everybody who took the time to listen, we appreciate it more than you know. It should be on your podcast everywhere. We'll try to dice it up and put it out on 15-minute segments on YouTube and TikTok, and we'll see if we can get it out there for you. Thank you. Sure, you want to be better prepared for any emergency in the uncertain world that we live in today. Sustainability Systems, Inc. has made it easier than ever before to have enough emergency storage food on hand to provide for your family. That's worry-free hunger insurance that your family will always have enough food on the table to meet any emergency. Sound good? But the budget's tight right now, right? How does less than a cup of coffee a day sound? That's just $39.95 a month, and Sustainability will send you a full bucket of delicious, ready-to-serve meals every quarter until you have built up enough storage food with a 25-year shelf life to take care of your family. Go to yourlifeboat.net. That's yourlifeboat.net. Or call us today at 1-800-713-4628, and please don't delay and be caught needing it but not having it. 1-800-713-4628. You'll thank us tomorrow.